Hi class, welcome to Conflict Resolution Basics. I'm Mr. Haile. I'm glad you all came today. I wanted to start with our objective before we go into the actual lesson of learning some of the conflict resolution skills. Our objective today is that I want each of you to be able to recognize maybe a conflict strategy in the past that has not worked for you, and then choose one of the 5 that we're going to learn in this lesson and that you would like to learn to put into practice. So that's your objective. And then the language arts objective is that we're going to look at the most common sources of conflict in literature, since we're talking about literature. An icebreaker question today is, can you think of a time when a conflict ended up having a positive outcome? We always think of conflict as being negative, but sometimes you can work things through and end up with a positive outcome. And if you can think of that, why do you think that happened? What made that different from negative experiences? So we're going to go on to the slides. I wanted to start with a quote. This is a quote from a writer named Max Lucado. Conflict is inevitable, but combat is optional. So in other words, you're always going to have conflict, but it doesn't always have to be a war. So I'm going to look at about 4 or 5 general or main sources of conflict. The first one is goals. Goal conflict means that when 2 people or more than 2 people have different priorities, and those priorities are not in sync, and so each person is wanting to go their own way because they have different goals. So you could also define it as a lack of shared goals. Another source of conflict would be personality conflicts, which a lot of times you can't really figure out the reason why. There just isn't a chemistry between you and another person. And then scarce resources, that type of conflict is when you don't have enough to go around and everyone wants a part of whatever it is that you're trying to get. In this picture here, it's a jelly bean with about 5 forks. So there's not enough to go around, so that causes conflict. And then values, of course. Values is one of the most common conflicts, is that people have a different perspective or a different worldview, and it can lead to conflict. You're going to have a different interpretation of that which you are debating. And then styles is what we're going to look at. There's a study, it's a real famous study. Thomas Kilman is the name of the study we're going to look at, in the 5 main management conflict styles. So styles just means that everyone has a different communication style, and it's not always a right answer. It's not always a general answer and true for everyone at the same time. So here's a diagram of the Thomas Kilman conflict mode instrument. The 5 most known conflict management styles, we're going to look at them individually, but we have competing, avoiding, collaborating, accommodating, and then notice that compromising is in the middle. So compromising is one that kind of holds the others together. We'll see that 2 of them are probably ones we want to shoot for understanding, is compromising and collaborating. But let's define each of them quickly here. Accommodating is when you cooperate to a high degree, and sometimes it's at your own expense. But there are times when accommodating is okay. Like, let's say you're with someone that is an expert in a subject and you're learning from them, it's okay to accommodate. But there are other times when it's negative. This little picture shows somebody having to lay down between 2 cliffs and the guy's going to walk over him. That's a negative aspect of accommodating, where you're giving in too much to the other person. It doesn't help with the objective. Avoiding, this is one of the most common responses to conflict. This is when you simply avoid the issue, but you really aren't helping the other person or yourself. All you're doing is delaying, and you're putting the solution off to another time. And then we have collaborating, and this is one that we want to look at. This is where you partner or pair up with the other party to achieve both of your goals. This is how you get out of what's called the win-lose paradigm. Because a lot of times in conflict resolution, one person wins and another person loses. Well, that's not resolution. So collaboration is one of the ways where we're looking for a win-win solution. where it's another word for it would be called brainstorming, where people put their ideas together and they choose one that works for everyone. And then competing, this is a common win-lose paradigm. That's where each person is trying to reach their goal, very similar to what we talked about earlier with goal setting, where there's a conflict of goals. And then, of course, compromising. This is kind of the flip side of collaboration. Compromising can be a lose-lose scenario where neither party really achieves what they are looking for. It can also be win-win if there's an agreement involved. So those are the general definitions of the 5 styles of conflict. Now this is the literary piece of our lesson, of our blended learning lesson. There's 6 types of literary conflict. I just wanted to look at a few of them. If you look in literature, you'll find that the most common types of literary conflict are character versus self, where your conflict is with your own moral choices. And then the most common of all is character versus character. And then you have character versus nature, where it's man or woman versus natural disaster or weather. And then you have character versus supernatural, which is popular today with the whole superhero genre. And so what I wanted to do is give you an opportunity to do a writing assignment. So if you would just jot down a memory of a time when you had a conflict, when it didn't work, and then choosing from the 5 that we've gone over today, write down one that you would like to learn more about, or that you would like to put into practice. And then we also have a post test, which I've handed out, and there's 2 questions, one from the conflict management styles lesson, and then one from our literature conflict lesson. So the questions, the first one is the following is a definition, so you can just choose which of these 5 are the definition. This is where you partner or pair up with the other party to achieve both of your goals. So the choices again are accommodating, avoiding, collaborating, competing, and compromising. And then the second post-test question regarding conflict in literature, this is a famous quote from Shakespeare. To be or not to be, that is the question, whether 'tis nobler in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, or to take aim against a sea of troubles and by opposing them to die to sleep. And what is the conflict in this passage? Is it slings and arrows, death, himself, or the King of England? So that's just a quick review of part 1 of conflict resolution. As you look at the things that you've written, we'll have now a time of sharing where you'll be able to share with the rest of the group experiences, if you'd like to, about one of the 5 conflict styles that you would like to learn or put into practice, and maybe you have an experience you'd like to share with the group. So that's the lesson for today. Thank you.